Welcome to Power Up Your Practice, the go-to podcast for law firm owners and managing attorneys working on the business, not in it. I'm Ruby Powers, your guidance to the heart of law practice management, bringing your insights from leading legal minds, trailblazing attorneys, and expert guests who provide practical perspectives on running your firm more effectively and efficiently. And before we dive in, I'm thrilled to announce that my latest book, Power Up Your Practice, is out and available on Amazon. It's packed with actionable advice for growing a successful law firm. Be sure to grab your copy today. And don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter for exclusive tips and resources. And if you're enjoying this podcast, we love your reviews. They help us reach more attorneys like you who are striving to build the practice of their dreams. Prepare to open your mind, be inspired, and power up your practice to the next level.
It's going to be good.
Yeah. Welcome, everyone. I'm your host, Ruby Powers, your companion through the ever-evolving landscape of law practice management. And in each episode, we get to hear from our guests about their superpowers, their perspective on life, and how they reach success and what they're up to. I'm really excited to have Tom Martin, founder and CEO of LawDroid. He's also one of the co-founders of the Legal Tech Awards, which I was able to attend not too long ago. Super impressed, and it was a great evening. And he's an author, a philosopher, a coder, a lawyer. It seems like he's up to a lot of great things. And so I've been watching him on LinkedIn, bumping into him at conferences, and I finally got to catch him here on the podcast. And so I'm really glad to get this opportunity. Tom, why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Thank you so much, Ruby. It was amazing to get to see you at the awards. It was a lot of fun, and I'm glad that everyone seemed to really enjoy themselves. So that's one thing that I'm really proud of, is co-founding the American Legal Technology Awards with my friends, Kat Moon and Patrick Pallas. I also do my main job, which is running LawDroid.
Oh, yeah. I just have to say, I think it's hard not to enjoy Damian Reel singing to us Frank Sinatra tunes about AI and legal tech and it being the law prom, or whatever it was called. But anyway, sorry for those.
Law prom, the Oscars of legal tech. We kind
of for all those who couldn't attend,
throw those around,
right?
But yeah, I really follow my passions in a way. Like, I love technology, AI, the law, and just try to put it all together.
Okay, for those who don't know, what is LawDroid, and just give us a little bit more about that.
So LawDroid is my company that I own, that I founded 8 years ago, and we started out with chatbots, kind of more classical AI, but about 2 years ago we put a generative AI layer over it, and it's a couple of products. One is LawDroid Copilot, which is your trusty collaborator to help you do more basic legal research and a few other things. But we also have LawDroid Builder. And so you can get a bit more sophisticated with that. You could create your own custom AI agents and really take it to the next level.
Okay, so for those who are listening, I mean, our audience are law firm owners, partners, managing attorneys, even those, I'm sure, in operations of a firm. What is an AI agent if they don't know?
Yeah, it's a great question, because so far, if you've used ChatGPT or if you've dabbled in any other AI, they're essentially a copilot. And what that means is you're sitting here, you're using it, you're asking for something, then you get a response. You ask for something, you get a response. So it kind of ties you to being here.
Mm-hmm.
And it's great. Like, it does lots of awesome stuff. But when I say the next level, what I mean is harnessing the power of AI to go out into the world and do stuff for you without you having to be there. So what's an example of that? The number one most popular one that we work with law firms and lawyers for is for lead capture. So you have an agent that's on your website that's answering questions. You could feed it information. It could answer using generative AI on the fly. It could answer these questions. And you give it a goal and set of instructions. You use an AI inference model like OpenAI or Anthropic's Claude, um, and you give it some knowledge. And so when you put all of that together, the tools, the knowledge, the AI model, and you put it all together, it can do things on its own, make judgment calls on certain things like, does this person sound like they're a new client or they're an existing client or things like that, and be doing useful work for you that you may have paid someone to do.
Okay, so basically they can take the place of an assistant, like a human assistant person?
For some tasks, yes. Like,
Wow.
some law firms, they've come to us because they've been paying a great deal of money to companies that have somebody working a bot, right? Like they have somebody working a chat
Mhm.
bot
Yeah, yeah,
where they actually have a human that's like saying, what's your name, what's your number, we'll have a lawyer call you back.
right.
It's very mechanical. So why would you pay a human being to do that? Especially when that's not the most fun to be doing that anyways in a call center somewhere. So what we do is we basically have automated that entire engagement between a new potential client and the bot. And that way it's automated. It says exactly what you want it to say. And it is there 24/7, 365 to capture new business for you.
Okay, so that's one example with, like, the lead generation or maybe being on your website or something like that. What's another example where, you can use agents or LawDroid to step in?
Yeah, another example that I'm really excited about, and it's our second most popular, is an AI receptionist.
Okay.
So don't need a call center anymore. You don't need to, pay those huge sums of money to have somebody answering your phones for you. Basically, you take one of our agents, we connect it to a phone number, you forward your calls to that number, and you have an AI receptionist who's, thank you so much for calling the law firm. How can I help you? Are you a new client, existing client, or is this something else? And they could say something like, well, you guys should know I've been working with you for 5 years. And it's intelligent enough to classify that as an existing client, send them down the road where you would want to maybe give them options to get transferred to employees that you have, take a message, you know, route the calls appropriately. You could even capture information from somebody that calls in and then use the information that you capture to fill out a document, and even do some basic intake. So it's really amazing what you could do. But we now empower law firms to spin up an AI receptionist.
I'm taking that in. So, okay, so I can hear some people say, well, what language or how confidential information, or what if it's the court calling? And what if, like, I don't know, something goes wrong, or, I don't know. Like, what's the success rate, or what have you been able to troubleshoot a lot of scenarios? Or how do you overcome some of those fears that us lawyers like to have?
Yeah, I mean, the thing about security and privacy is the same across the board with any software that you use. Of course, companies like mine are incentivized for obvious reasons to
Mhm.
be careful and to use, encryption, bank rate encryption that you would use on any software service application. We keep everything private. No, we do not train against it. So it's not going to end up in some public database or anything like that because we keep it internally. Of course, I'm incentivized as a lawyer myself. I come with a background of adhering to ethics, and I wouldn't want my own stuff to get out there. And the whole reason I built LawDroid is to help other lawyers with what they do. So, we follow the rules. Um, so, those concerns are, I think they're inflated. It's natural, though, at the beginning to have those questions and to have somebody answer them, especially if they're going to be handling that type of information for you. But we put in place all the safeguards that you experience with any other um, application, like, let's say, Dropbox or Box or Clio. There's safeguards that you take to protect your information.
And what about the language part? Can you just flip to whatever language, or how does that work?
Yeah, one of the advantages of using generative AI for the purpose of understanding how to categorize different calls and then being able to respond autonomously. Because those models are multilingual, all somebody needs to do is to talk to it in a different language, Spanish, for example, and it will respond in Spanish. So like it understands that, okay, this person's speaking this language, we need to engage in that language. And so there's numerous different languages that that it could use to communicate with people that call in.
Okay, well, and as an immigration attorney, that's really good to know, because we have to have a fully bilingual Spanish English receptionist service and receptionists, and then but we have clients from all over, and some need the language help. Well, that's exciting. I mean, actually, my thought is like, you must have been very forward thinking if you started this 8 years ago, because I feel like people did ChatGPT is only a couple of years old, and I mean, I know that AI has been around for a lot longer, but it wasn't like as approachable to the normal person. And just like what were you up to 8 years ago, and like what was the beginning of LawDroid like?
Yeah, and even before LawDroid, I was still dabbling in technology and the web and all that before I launched LawDroid. But what really struck me, and the reason why I launched LawDroid, was 2016. There was this new thing that came into the world, chatbots. Right, chatbots were a new thing back then,
Yeah.
and it really captured my imagination because up until that point, LegalZoom had automated the creation of documents, of legal documents, but nobody had really been able to automate the provision of legal information. So like, I think that lawyers, there's three things that they primarily do. There's documents, there's providing advice, and then the third one is court advocacy.
Mhm.
And LegalZoom had did the documents. No one had yet at that point really done legal information and providing that in a automated way. And I thought if you could combine those two things, that'd be pretty amazing. So that's why I jumped on board and launched LawDroid, to really capture that interest and, you know, get a solution out there that could help not only myself, but other lawyers.
I think I know our listeners, just like when I am going out there in speeches and doing talks about AI or technology, they're all over the place as to like, they're creating their own legal tech companies, or they have never even gotten a ChatGPT account or something like that, or are sort of like afraid of it. So, but I feel like as we've gone out those last couple of years, like there's a huge, people are a lot more well-versed in this space. I will tell you, just because I feel like you would get this, like I have not used the word human more than I have in the last like 6 or 8 months, because I feel like I have to differentiate between human versus, AI, like I never use that word as much as I've had to, but even in our discussion. But I've been hearing about the agents for, I don't know, 6 or 10 or something months. And some of my friends are getting into like trying to, I don't know, it sounds bad when you say it out loud, but like basically try to automate as much as possible and to save their cost, save costs and reduce labor costs, basically. And I've heard from a couple of my very forward thinking friends that are able to reduce their staff in maybe half, or like complete one or two positions. And I know that that's really a big fear out in the world about everything that's going on. But I think I'm more of the mindset, let's let the bots and the AI do as much as they possibly can, and let's let the humans do what they are better at, and then let's work together as a team. And also let's we need to constantly be skilling our team. Like even today I was talking with my team about like, okay, you guys need to be using AI and technology as much as possible. Hey, let's share ideas. What programs should we be getting? Anyway, that was sort of like a mini monologue. Discuss. There wasn't a question there, but what are you thinking?
Well, I'm sensitive to the same questions and concerns, right? Like, yes, I run a legal AI company, but at the same time, I care about people and the effect that this has on the world. But I can tell you that this is a freight train that is not going to stop
Right.
until it changes the world. And there are concerns, there are misgivings, but the thing is, if you think back to the agricultural revolution, once you get started with it, you can't really stop it. It's
Right.
just a matter of those changes kind of filtering through the world and then seeing how that plays out. Unfortunately, it's going to affect some people where they have to reskill or they have to, learn a different type of work. It may be that just the nature of the work that we do changes. Like we still have the job title lawyer, but
Hmm.
what lawyers do from day to day is going to be a different set of skills than it has been. Like when technology came and invented the plow, to plow a field, well, somebody who was seeding by hand could keep doing that, but they would likely get outcompeted by somebody who was using a plow to seed and to toil, to turn the soil. So we can say like, okay, this is too much. I'm not going to engage with this. I'm going to push away from the table. But the reality is that the lawyers that use this are going to get it farther ahead.
For sure. And I'm thinking about two things. One, Jordan Furlong's article that really struck me back in like February of this year about how that we're going to be focused more as lawyers on the three central roles in the post AI era of advocating, advising, and accompanying. And like even you mentioned about the legal doc. I mean, there's just so much of our day that's consumed with administration, and even some of the Clio legal trends report that just came out, seeing how much more we won't be doing that if we were to really leverage AI and like using LawDroid, for example. And I think that I agree with you. I think it's happening. Whether you want to put your head ostrich in the sand, put your head in the or if you want to like embrace it, like on the whole Rogers innovation curve and be more of an innovator or early adopter. And that's your choice where you're going to be on how this plays out. But it's definitely evolving. And I'm really excited about these agents, and I'm thinking I just don't have enough time to go figure and play with all this stuff to figure it out. But I'm glad that there's services like LawDroid and to be able to sort of be like, here's how it works.
Yeah. Well, I come to this with now, I hate to say it, but just over 25 years under my belt as a practicing lawyer. Okay. So I started as a solo. Then I now have a small firm that I still run. I have a great staff that helps me to do, frees me up to do LawDroid. Um, but it's still a practicing a practice that I have. And from that experience, I've learned and I've gone through exactly what your audience has gone through. Like there's so much work that we don't want to be doing that, was not fun to do. Like all of the detail work, keeping the books is maybe one thing. Um, Lots of paperwork that needs to be taken care of, administrative stuff. And yes, if you're lucky enough to have the margin to afford staff, then you can hire staff to help you with that. But this is really bringing down the burden of all of that stuff that you need to do yourself or have pay additional staff for. And believe me, it will lead to a much better day-to-day life, not having to do all of that cumbersome work. The more burden it can relieve, the more we can lead engaging lives and have more time with our families, which for me, honestly, that's something I regret a bit. Like I regret that I didn't have more time with my girls when they were growing up. And I think that like if this technology existed the way it does now 20 years ago, I probably could have had much more time with them, and that would have been a much better thing and
Mm,
place to be.
that's one way to think about it. Hmm. Yeah. My kids are 11 and 13, and my 11-year-old tells me that yeah, I need to find more time to be with them. That I spend, if she wants to be a lawyer one day, but she wants to be a non-stressful, doesn't have to work all the time lawyer. And I was like, okay, you show me that one. But anyway, no, I mean, part of my book is how to make that all work. And I think that's, everyone has their own journey and their own, requirements or the guide of what success is. And I think it takes a lot to get there. But, it's making me think about how I graduated law in 2008, started my law firm in 2009. And I feel like that was a really pivotal moment where small solo firms could really start to compete with like larger firms, just because they could be lean and still have access to a lot of the same tools. But beforehand, you had to have a big law library, or you had to have like those, big machine to take credit cards, and it was a big like pivotal moment, I feel like, where you could sort of equaling the playing field. I feel like we're sort of seeing that now in a way, because I coach a lot of small law firms are starting up, and I'm like, you have so many tools at your disposal. Like, you can build this such a lean, efficient machine as a firm, that a lot of us didn't have access to those tools, when we started.
I completely agree with you, especially about the timing. I mean, I did graduate 10 years ahead of you. So like I graduated from UCLA Law in 97. But I didn't go solo hanging my own shingle out until 2006. And it was around 2006 that you started changing over to the cloud
Yeah,
from the prior like server-based stuff that you had to have in your
right.
own office. And that cloud-based stuff, like Clio and others, made it possible to have access to this much more sophisticated software. And yeah, that was a critical time.
Yeah, I think that was the big moment. And there's like the legacy programs from like before that, and then there's the open API ones more from after. Well, moving to the Legal Tech Awards, like I'd sort of seen it last year because one of my friends had was honored with an award, and I was like, oh, that looks like fun. And then I was speaking at ClioCon this year, and I was like, ooh, that looks okay. It's the night before it starts. That sounds great. So I didn't really know much about it, but what just made you and decide, and your co-founders decide to start it, and maybe tell those listeners a little bit like what it is and what you're up to.
Yeah, so the American Legal Technology Awards it is an awards ceremony that we have once a year, but it's also everything that builds up to that. We have a few webinars with some, brainiacs that we call genius panels, where they talk about different subjects, including AI. But like our big one is the state of the industry panel that we have right before the awards comes up, and we have industry leaders like we've had Jack Newton on there with Clio. We've had the Drew Armstrong, who's the CEO of LawPay in my case.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so they talk about what's the new stuff that's happening, and it's really insightful and it's really practical, and it's not, thought leadership. It's actually like stuff that they've done themselves. So that's really interesting. But the awards, we established it to recognize people in the legal industry that are working with technology to make people's lives better. And our mission is to hold up examples of people that are doing just that. And our hope is that we encourage, a feedback loop where people see what other people are doing, and that really excites them and gets them, out in the world doing their own thing to make things better for everyone. And so far, this is our 5th year that we just finished up, and we're going to go into our 6th next year. And it's really been amazing in how many people we've touched. And I think really people are getting the message, and they really feel that because we've heard it back from them, that it's about recognizing people with a lot of heart, and doing it because we're trying to make the world better, not just, it isn't about making money on the event, because we haven't but it's about getting everyone in the room and really enjoying each other's company and recognizing how awesome our community is.
I'm just so excited that you guys did this because so for those who might not know, like the categories are access to justice, court, education, enterprise, individual, journalism, which was new this year, law firm, startup, artificial intelligence, and lifetime achievement. But when you're there, it was my first time to go. Like, not only was it just awesome to be in, I don't know how many people were there, 100, 200, I don't know. I don't, it was hard to count. But like, just having those intimate conversations, bumping into each other, being able to talk and be inspired. Maybe you saw them on LinkedIn, but you haven't seen them since, ABA Tech Show or wherever it was. And you actually get to like talk and connect and see what's going on because technology is changing so fast these days too. And then to hear some of those stories, and I think that's really inspired me to see the different categories and those who are being honored. And that does inspire you. It's like, oh, that's good to know that they're doing that. Maybe we could collaborate. Or, oh, wait, my nonprofit's doing something like that. They should apply for this, or and just even meeting new people that I didn't know that night. It was really inspirational. So kudos to you and your co-founders, because I really think that it was a great evening and a great event. And I know it takes a lot of effort from the judges and everyone else who, putting it all together, and you do have sponsors and everything. So that's great.
Well, I really appreciate that. That's exactly what we wanted when we founded it. Myself, Professor Kat Moon at Vanderbilt, and Patrick Pallas from Washington, like, that was what we were hoping to inspire. And the fact that we have is a testament, to the energy and vibrance of the community. And, that's what we're hoping to bring back every year. And I'm glad that it's exciting you and encouraging you, because that's what we're hoping for.
And so next year it'll be in Boston in October. I'm right guessing.
Yeah, so we haven't finalized the plan for next year, but okay. Yeah, we're looking at Boston. I mean, the Clio Cloud Conference is going to be in Boston, but also, like, I am having a new tie to Boston, and I think that it kind of like makes sense. Like the constellation is kind of aligning the stars, possibly.
Well, we'll wait to see where that'll be, but that's great to know. So what do you think are some of the legal trends that we're going to see or continue to see? Legal tech trends.
Yeah, so one I just wrote about recently in my first contribution to the National Law Review, which has to do with basically bouncing off of the new legal trends report from Clio's statistic about 79% of lawyers using AI in some way from the previous year.
Which is huge. Yeah. I took so many photos, and I'm looking at legal trends right now, but I took so many photos of the keynote because I was just like, whoa, wow. It's good to hear that so much they're absorbing it, because it seemed like the first few months or year people weren't they were afraid. Anyway.
Yeah, I think everybody was just kind of shocked the first year, like now it's kind of par for the course. But I mean, November 2022, and there was, of course, AI that you could have an engagement with, but it wasn't the kind of fluent interaction where you're talking to an other intelligent person practically, with like it was with ChatGPT.
Right.
To have a machine actually talk back to you and hold a conversation intelligently it was a shock to the system. And so it did take about a year for it to filter through as to like, okay, what do we practically do with this thing? Like, like an alien landing on the planet and trying to learn how to communicate with it. But I think we're there now. This year has really been about the practical. It's really been about more of the nuts and bolts, about accuracy, about practical use cases. And so, the trends that I have, that I would point out are just that it's going to deepen in that regard. It's just going to become much more practical in finding ways that we could use this to make our lives easier. One example is the AI receptionist. Makes a ton of sense. You plug it into your law firm, it captures that information. You don't have to have a person doing that job anymore or spending the extra overhead on that. That's a real practical use. It's not abstract or research, or maybe it'll hallucinate about a case or something like that. All those worries are set aside. This is admin work, and it could help with that. So I think those kinds of things are going to become much more routine. John McCarthy, who's one of the originators of the term, well, he was the originator of the term artificial intelligence back in the 50s. But one of the things that he noted over his career was whenever something starts working, it's no longer considered AI.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we've all seen that the goalposts have been moving.
Is that similar to the quote, like yesterday's AI is like tomorrow's software or something like that? Or like it's just incorporated. You don't think of it as separate. I don't know.
Yeah,
maybe it's adjacent.
Yeah, similar idea. I'm sure that if we ask ChatGPT, it would come up with both of those quotes.
Right. I'm really bad at like quotes anyway. So anyway, I was just looking at some of the legal trends, about how legal industry is increasingly adopting a variety of AI powered technology to enhance efficiency and accuracy. The top 3 solutions being: 1, the generic non-legal AI tools. So like that's like ChatGPT, etc. Like those are the easier like entry points. 2, it's like the AI legal research platforms. That's the one that, everyone goes a little weary of after some of the lawyers got into trouble, but it's getting better. And like I listened to Damien Real. He was a keynote at our ALA Tech Summit and with VLEX, and it was like, oh my gosh, like just mind blown, like thinking about everything it's capable. And then the 3rd was document drafting tools. And I think that's really where a lot of other firms are starting to get to too, because I think that's where we spend a ton of time. It's like research and drafting, I think. And if those can be, under wraps and not take as much time, then wow, that we're going to be saving a lot of time.
Yeah, I think so. When I was doing litigation, one of the key things that I would first ask an assistant or paralegal to do is to put a skeleton together for me. The skeleton being like a scaffold of a pleading that we had done before about generally the same kind of motion for I don't know, motion for summary judgment. And then they would take the facts of, our case and then put them in there. But it'd be a starting point, right, for me to jump into the document and get started in revising it. In a similar way, these tools are enabling that, where instead of having to have an assistant or paralegal spend an hour or two collating this information and putting it together into something you could start with, it could really get you more than halfway there. And you still need to put in your intelligence and making the arguments better and more specific. You might also still now, based upon your experience, know that, okay, I'm arguing in front of this judge and that judge doesn't particularly like this argument. So I want to put that maybe as the last argument to make, but put another argument front and center. So we still have a lot to contribute as lawyers. But yeah, these tools are going to help considerably in reducing the amount of time it takes for us.
So like I'm also a practicing lawyer, and I do litigation, and we've been a series of short-staffed on experienced, well, in my case, Spanish-speaking immigration court knowledgeable attorneys. I can't seem to find them. I don't know. They don't seem to exist. Like they're unicorns or something. But anyway, and I'm one of them. But I'd rather be running my law firm and doing this podcast than going to court all the time. So there were times where I had to leverage my legal assistant, like you were saying, to like give me an outline, make a list of questions, start doing the first prep or so, and then I'll dive in and I'll, finish it up. But now I could see you could run through a lot of your templates and using AI, and you could have AI do that for you so that you could have, really save legal assistant and attorney time. But you're right, like there's still going to be things that they don't know from experience. But I'm just really fascinated. Honestly, I feel like I should stop going to conferences and writing and doing podcasts, and I should just spend a whole bunch of time working on how to fix my own firm with all this AI. Like, not fix it, but we have been working on it. It just takes time. We've been working on implementing new case management software and connecting the CRM properly. But now I want to get on to the next project, but I have to finish the last project.
I think every lawyer, including myself, would do well to set aside at least an hour or two per week at a minimum to basically go over, okay, what is the latest that's come out and how does this apply to me and my firm? How can I make it work for me? Like to actually book that, time and set it aside so that it doesn't get eaten up by anything else. Because what's happening right now is just too crucial to miss out on. And, I know that there's a lot going on with life and work, but that's the only way is really to keep up to date on this stuff and finding people out there like yourself. Damien is amazing too. I have a Substack called LawDroid Manifesto where I try to keep people up to date about these new changes. But I think keeping up with it and testing it out, playing around with it,
Right.
is just so important.
No, I completely agree. And I regularly say you need to block off time to work on the business, not in the business. And like the more conversations I have like this, I just, even coming back from a conference, like you just need some debrief time to just sort of like let it sink in. And, one of my friends, Bo Atkins, he's just on LinkedIn all the time. And but it's like his form of journaling in a way about like, that's the way he processes everything that he's learned. And I'm like, that's so brilliant because, you're sharing that great content and you're processing it. But I often just come right back to work and be like, hit the ground running right from the airport and like, okay, what's going on? But no, I agree. We do need to block off time. And I think it used to be that you could just evaluate your tech stack like maybe once a year. Then I think it was like maybe every 6 months. But now I feel like it's almost every quarter, or if you hear something big in the news, you should just stop everything and go check it out. Like yesterday, I was being told about Notebook LM, and I'm just like, ooh, I wish I had more time to play with that.
Yeah, I really love it.
Yeah.
So one thing for me is there's a lot of books I need to get through. I love keeping up to date and learning new stuff through the books that people write. Like one just recently is Techno-Feudalism,
Oh, wow.
which, anyways, I don't want to do a deep dive in that. But let's say a book like that. I want to get it in my head. What are different ways of getting it into my head? Well, one way is to read it. Another way is to, get it, put it in AI, have it summarize it. Another way, Notebook LM, you put it in there, maybe a chapter at a time, and then you have it create those podcasts off of it. And so then you actually have two people like conversing about the content of the book. And I'm a big believer in the more doors you could open up to get access, the better. So visually reading it is one way, but if I'm walking my dog, I could put the podcast that was created based off of that content in my ear and learn it that way. And so it just keeps you, moving forward and learning the material and learning new stuff. And so anyways, Notebook LM is great for that.
Yeah, I mean, people learn differently, like visually, audio, practically, and if you hear it, or like that's why some people writing out your notes it helps reinforce it. So, I mean, that's why I feel like I feel like what we're experiencing is a paradigm shift upon a paradigm shift upon a paradigm shift, and it's sort of like hard to figure out which way is up and which way is down, and where to just pause and say like this, where are we? Because like even just seeing these new tools and you're like, whoa, how could I use that? And then that means this, and then that means that. And I get what you're saying. Like the people who are finally waking up to where we are just, we're sharing more ideas about how to practically use AI. But like I've seen this whole evolution of the people who like yourself are super in, there's like the small niche group of legal tech thought leaders, and then there's those who are like experimenting, and those who are like, I'm going to quit practicing by the time this ever matters, or something like that,
If I had $1 for every time I've heard that, yeah.
Oh yeah. And I'm like, and you mentioned that you're going to be an adjunct professor or teaching, I think you said. I later today I have my law class, and the evolution of my tech class on this in this course has changed from like, this is what ChatGPT is like 4 semesters ago, to like, how are you using ChatGPT? And like, they're teaching me things, what they're doing with it. And I'm telling them like, this is good. Like, you could be scared of this, but this is good that you're learning how to use it. And then when you go out there and practice, you could be showing your bosses, or, in your own practice, like how to be more efficient. And so that conversation over the last 4 semesters has changed a lot.
Yeah, there's so many possibilities that it opens up, and I'm actually really looking forward to talking with you offline about putting together a syllabus and working with students and what that's like, because I'm excited about that experience that's coming up. But I think far too much of the focus has been on, oh, this helps students to cheat, they're going to be copying and plagiarizing, like that. It seems like our minds are just programmed to go to a dark place first.
Yeah.
And then hopefully after we get that out of our system, we could see things more clearly. And there's many different ways that it could be used to help us learn. Like I mentioned with Notebook LM and the podcast and learning material that way. Another way is, I've recently been learning Python, and the programming language, for those that aren't familiar, called Python, that is utilized a lot with AI. And of course, you could read a book about it. You could even take a course like Coursera where they teach you about it. But I've been using Claude Sonnet 3.5, where I'll put in a chunk of code and then ask it to explain to me step by step how that piece of code works. And then I could ask it for clarification for things that it's explaining that I still don't understand. And the fact that it could take me through step by step, and then I make it test me
Whoa.
after it's explained it to me, and that it won't go to the next step until I've demonstrated that I've understood it. So,
wow. So maybe we won't have jobs as professors soon. I'm just kidding.
No, what I think is we'll become much more effective professors.
Yeah, no, I agree. If we use these tools alongside, it'll help us, make sure that they're retaining the information in a useful way. And I think that's really needed. And part of what I do in my class is try to have a lot more practical exercises. Like when I was at CleoCon, I was in the workshop track, and I realized the reason why it didn't feel so unfamiliar to me was because I do that in my law class, and we like pause and do an exercise and reflect, and it's such an unusual way, because when you go to regular CLE where it's just like the panelists just talk to you and then Q&A and then we're done. But I think we retain more. I got a lot of really great feedback because when you actually have some time to reflect and converse with others. And so I think you're right. It's going to leverage all the different ways people learn and retain, and it's going to be great. And this is exciting.
Education, it's really social. It's a social engagement, like it's a social phenomenon, education. And it always has been, right? So like if you think back to before there were books, knowledge was communicated. Yeah, oral tradition, knowledge was communicated through story, and it was communicated by a person who was, kind of leading people to this place in their minds. And it's the same thing. We still need teachers and professors. Like, I know personally, like one thing is it fastens my attention. Like I need somebody to like hold me accountable. And so you still need that. I just think professors will become more like shepherds. Like we're shepherding together.
Yeah.
All of these different things to help the students learn what they need to,
I love that. Well, we talked so much about all these other things. I have to rapid fire ask you a couple of questions, which
okay.
I know if I warned you. But anyway, the first one is, what would you consider your superpower and why?
Oh man, superpower. I don't know that I have any superpowers. Um, I I just really like to learn from people, and I think that keeping an open mind and listening to others, because I think when you keep an open mind and speak with other people, you get to learn what they're good at, and that helps you to improve yourself in being more aware and striving to be better in the ways that you've discovered through them.
That's really good. Yeah, when people I get them caught off guard, I'm always really intrigued by what people are going to say. But that's really beautiful. And for what is your okay? Another one. What's your favorite board game or game?
um, okay, so my favorite game, I'm pretty old school and this dates me, but my favorite video game
Okay.
is Galaga.
Okay.
Yep. So if I if I ever stop by any arcade, or like maybe it's in somebody's office,
Yeah.
and by the way, I've been dying to get one, like a full size one. I want to put over here. Um, but yeah, Galaga, I can't pass it up. I played it as a kid. I was like 11 at the pizza joint, and putting the quarters up there to reserve my game and stuff. And like, I love Galaga.
There's this like resort we go to every once in a while, and it has like the Super Mario Brothers like arcade thing. I'm like, why is it an arcade? It's like not that old, but anyway. Um, and then my kids are like, "How come you're so good at that, Mom?" Like because like I don't play video games at home, even though we own like 5 million. I don't know what we own, but anyway, it's like it comes back to me, and I'm all like, "Watch out!"
Right, get in the zone.
Mushroom, yeah. Anyway, so well, Tom, it's been great. How can people any like closing thoughts that our listeners can like sort of just end on, and how can people find you if they want to connect?
Yeah, thank you. The number one thing I would say, which I've been kind of consistent about saying through this, is stay curious. Keep an open mind. Play is extremely important. Engage with these tools, play with them, remain curious, and you'll be far ahead of the pack. As far as keeping in touch, I would love to keep in touch with you all. You could either like email me directly at tom@lawdroid.com, but also like feel free to subscribe to my Substack, lawdroidmanifesto.com. Great articles and podcasts that come out about every week.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I definitely receive those, and always learn a lot. So, well, thank you, Tom, and thanks everyone for joining us. This is one of the first episodes that we're recording where the book is out, so I'm super excited. Prep Your Practice, Create the Law Firm, and the Life You Deserve is available on Amazon, and we're always welcoming those to put a review, give us feedback, let us know more about it. And we're always looking for great podcast guests. So definitely reach out to us. But thank you everybody for listening, and you can stay connected with us in between episodes at the Power Up Your Practice Facebook group. We'll see you later. Take care.
Thanks, Ruby.
Are you feeling overwhelmed by administrative, marketing, or other legal tasks? Well, you're not alone. Many lawyers are in the same boat. They're trying to build up their firm, and they're trying to figure out how to get help to do so. So that's where Staffy comes in. So over 90 law firm owners, just like you, have turned to Staffy for help with their legal, administrative, marketing, and client-facing work. Staffy's mission is to help lawyers find balance while growing their firm with bilingual virtual staff and full HR support. And they take the hassle out of the team management and focus on what matters most, your clients and your practice. I've personally benefit from multiple staff support with about 8 virtual assistants over the last few years with my 2 businesses, including my law firm, Power Law Group. Now schedule a free consultation with Staffy. It's stafi.cc, and you can use the code RUBY, that's REBY, for a $500 off coupon. Thank you for tuning in to the Power Up Your Practice Law Practice Management podcast. I'm your host, Ruby Powers, and it's been a pleasure sharing this time with you. If you've enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to leave us a review, tell someone else about us, and I would love to get this podcast shared with others to reach more listeners like you. Don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter for exclusive content, tips, and updates straight to your inbox. And exciting news, our book, The Power Up Your Practice, is out and available on Amazon. It's packed with strategies, 25 chapters, to help you elevate your practice and achieve your goals. So join us next week as we dive into more advice and insight on law practice management. We'll see you next time.